Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. This time not a brand new deck, but an update to one from a couple of months ago. This one is going to be for my Punk Odion deck. So I'm going to do these every once in a while whenever I either do not have a whole ton of time to dump into a full series of videos like I normally try to do every week, or I just don't have a deck that I'm really excited to show you guys at the moment. And I'm just going to, with these, focus on the updates that I have done to a previous deck since its inception. So for this first one, there have been two major updates since I first made this deck, and this is my favorite deck currently, and I do play it at pretty much every locals, so I've got a lot of experience, and I've tuned it pretty well since its initial video. So the first major update is the inclusion of the new Punk stuff, Rising Scale, and Jam Fever. These two allow you to put a negate on the field much earlier than we used to be able to protect more of the combo, which is really cool to be able to do. And Rising Scale is also just really good in the grind game. If you happen to draw one for turn on your turn 3 after the board state has been simplified, maybe you didn't manage to completely shut out the opponent, which happens fairly often, people don't hold so easily anymore nowadays, then you can use Rising Scale to continue comboing on turn 3 to establish significant board presence, which is great. The other biggest change is that you may have already noticed the deck is 50 cards. The initial version was 40, and I mentioned in that video that I thought a 60 might be the best version of the deck. That was incorrect. I tried it for a little bit, and you don't see as many extenders at 60, and also you're playing Anubis the Last Judge at 3 and Man with the Mark at 3, and that gives us a total of 12 normal summons for our starters, and we do not want 12 normal summons because as soon as you use one normal summon, the rest of them become bricks. You don't want to see multiples. The 12 would be 3 Amin, 3 Ogre Dance, 3 Man with the Mark, and 3 Anubis the Last Judge. All of those are normal summon starters, and we do not want to see that many. In this version of the deck, we're running 7, which means we'll often see 1, and that's perfectly fine. 12 is too much. But we do not want to run just the 40, because we have a decent number of cards that we don't necessarily want to draw in our opening hand, and we do still have 17 total starters in this deck. 3 Amin, 3 Foxy Tune, 3 Ogre Dance, 1 Man with the Mark, 3, not Rising Scale, 3 Emergency Teleports, 3 Treasures of the Kings, and the 1 Terraforming. Makes 17 one-card starters that just get you where you want to go. So we don't mind running 50 because that means that our 17 starters is roughly 1 to 2 per hand, leaning more towards 2. And that's exactly where you want to be. As for the stuff we don't want to draw, this deck doesn't have any hard garnets necessarily. The closest thing is Fengli, where if you open him, he's just discard fodder, and then you don't get your second 8 later in the combo, which does kind of suck, but he doesn't completely grind our combo to a halt if we open him. Outside of that, there's cards we don't necessarily want to see, things like Temple of the Kings, Shirakusai, Wagon, Deer Note. Most of those are fine in some situations, like Shirakusai can be a starter if you have another Punk card, Deer Note can be an extender if you have another Punk card, Temple of the Kings can be an extender or protection if you have the right trap. But all in all, we generally just don't want to see any of those cards, so 50 helps us see those less, which is pretty great. As for the new cards, I am playing 1 Man with the Mark now. You can search him off of Treasures of the Kings on turn 3 and beyond, or if you don't use your normal summon, you can fetch him, normal summon him, and then if you already had access to Temple of the Kings, either Temple of the Kings itself or Circuit, then you can fetch a Verdict of Anubis, which is really nice to be able to have, because this deck's one major weakness, and you'll see a lot of the things I've updated are to get around that weakness, is evenly matched. So our Apophis the Swamp Deities can negate during main phase only. That means most board breakers we don't really care about because we can negate them pretty easily, and even if they Raigeki us, we still have our whole back line. But evenly is during the battle phase, and it hits our backline too, so we really don't want to let that resolve. That's why I'm playing the 3 Verdict of Anubises, whereas I was only playing 1 in the other version. It just says no evenly for you, sorry. We also have a Millennium reframing in here now, and I'm playing a Visas Amritara instead of the second copy of Apophis. The Amritara fetches Millennium reframing, which is just a Omni Negate counter trap. We can do that instead of going into Crystal Wing Synchro, which is, you know, it's a trade-off, but the nice thing is that in the original combo, you needed a card to set later in the combo to continue doing the Odion stuff. If you do not have a card to set, you can now go into Visas Amritara, grab reframing, and set that to continue the combo. So now Xamen is a true one-card combo in this deck. You do not necessarily need something to set like you did in the previous version, which is pretty cool, and it also counters evenly matched. Other little things I did, I took out the Dawn Dragster. Well, you can still make it. We have other ways to deal with spell traps now. I took out Shen Shen in exchange for the Jam Fever, and we're also playing an Amazing Dragon now, so that if we get stuck just doing punk stuff, we have more disruptions that we can do, because we can use Rising Scale, Summon Shirakusai, and that's 2 disruptions on the opponent's turn, so Amazing Dragon I feel like has gained some value from that. Otherwise, we're playing 3 Treasures of the Kings and the Terraforming now for 4 total copies, whereas the original version was only playing 2. I really like opening this and the Punk Engine, because it means that the opponent's going to throw everything at the Punk Engine trying to stop you, and you just had it anyways. It feels great for us and frustrating for them. And then I want to talk about the sideboard a little bit. I didn't give one in the initial video, but considering I've been playing the deck a bunch and I've tuned the sideboard, I can give my opinion. So preface this with my local meta is a very, very board breaker heavy and going second deck heavy, to the point where I don't often get hit by hand traps a whole ton. It's kind of weird. But that's one of the reasons I go so hard into things like Verdict of Anubis and Millennium reframing, is because these help with board breakers specifically. You could play fewer Verdict of Anubises and play some Mulchi's main deck if you wanted to, but people don't make me go second a lot of the time, just because that's how my meta is. So we play 3 Mulchis because if we know we're going second, they're really good to have. We play 3 Evenly Matched because it is the enemy, but it is also one of the best board breakers, so if we know we're going second, we play the 3 of those. We play a Feather Duster because we do, my meta has a Dinomorphia player, and Feather Duster is good against Dinomorphia. Then we've got some spice. I play a Quantum Cat, 3 Dusters, and 3 Thrust in the sideboard. This is a package in the event that you know you are going first. I do not main deck this because it is so bad to draw this package if you are going second. So if the opponent makes you go second and you have this in your deck, you cry. But if you know you're going to be going first, you lost the last game and then you decided I am going first, you will put these 7 cards in. And the point is that if you get interrupted in some way, you can hopefully slap 2 bodies together into a Silhouette Rabbit. Silhouette Rabbit set Quantum Cat, and then as long as you have 1 of 6 copies of Harpy's Feather Duster here, you can set that on the opponent's turn, flip Quantum Cat, declaring Wind-Winged Beast. It summons itself as a Wind-Winged Beast. Then you can activate Featherstorm to lock out the opponent for a turn and get back to your turn to hopefully go again without getting disrupted. It's tech that Ryziel uses. We just can use it via Quantum Cat rather than rank 4s. And then I play a talent that tends to come in at the same time as basically anything else. It's in the sideboard because I don't want it if I am playing against a going second board breaker only deck. And we have a good number of those. Again, my board's a little bit weird just because my local meta's a little bit weird. But feel free to play Triple Tack in place of like the extra Ghost Ogre. I just play it for Blue Eyes mostly. Ghost Ogre's really good against Blue Eyes. Things like that. But anyways, that is going to be it for the updated deck profile. I'm going to go through one new combo that we have available to us that is a really cool one and useful combo to know, and then we're going to play some actual games. So this is an all-in-one sort of video, low effort, let's go. Alright, so now I want to show you guys just a quick combo that you can do with this deck now that we have access to the new Punk monsters, Rising Scale and Jam Fever. So for this you have to... It's a 3-card combo, but those 3 can be a lot of different things. So the called by here is just to discard, that's all we need it for, so that can be literally anything. The Rising Scale can be either Rising Scale or Foxy Tune because we can search the other one. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to discard Ogre Dance to grab Zeomin, then we can normal summon Zeomin and fetch whichever one we don't have. In this case we have Rising Scale, so we would grab Foxy Tune. Foxy Tune, discard a card in hand to grab Shirakusai. Use into Rising Carp summons Wagon and Deernote. Wagon grabs us the field spell. We don't activate it immediately because we're going to go into Diabolantis, send Fangly, bring back specifically Rising Carp here. So this is why this combo is quite a bit better than this deck used to do just even a month ago, because we can bring back Rising Carp here and overlay into Punk Jam Fever to protect the entire rest of the combo, then summon the Rising Scale. We can use Rising Scale as our extra 8 instead of the Rising Carp that we used to have to use, so we have protection here, but the combo is otherwise the exact same. And Rising Scale, I add a Zeomin to hand here instead of special summoning, because this deck does not like to put extra bodies on the field. We can't use all of them and they clog up our monster space that we are supposed to be using to summon our trap guys, so I just add it to hand for follow-up for the next turn. So then the rest of the combo is the same as it used to be. We go into Ultimate Zolkin, set the field spell, grab Ancient Fairy Dragon to switch into the Odion stuff. We can grab Reframing now, which means we don't have to have another card in hand to put the 2 set cards so that we can go into Circuit, which is really nice. So we summon the Circuit by banishing Nibiru, which lets us get Temple, which lets us do the whole Odion line, summoning an Apophis to go into an Apophis, summoning the Apophis, contact fusing into an Apophis, setting both Apophises. For the last bit of this combo, after I blow up Ultimate Zolkin, again just to keep the space clear so that we can summon all of our trap monsters, you can either go into Evilzar Lars, which is a negate on field, which is good against evenly matched and certain other board breakers and things like that, or you can go into Silu Hat Rabbit, depending on what your opponent is on. Silu Hat Rabbit normally is going to set Statue of Anguish pattern. If you're post sideboard, you can set Quantum Cat off of that if you have the Harpy's Featherstorm in hand, in which case you would only bring back Apophis the Serpent. You would not bring back the Swamp Deity so that you have an extra spot to set the Harpy's Featherstorm. But otherwise, this is the end of the combo, basically. And that is 3 cards, technically. 1 just has to be a discard, and the other 2 are any way to get to Zeomin, and then either Foxy Tune or Rising Scale, which lets you do this. If you don't have one of those 2, you can still get to a very similar end board. You just don't get the Rising Carp early to go into Jam Fever to protect the rest of the combo. So you want to see that line up so that you can get protection early, which is really cool, but it doesn't stop you completely if you don't get that. Cool. Alright, so for our first game we are up against Runick Stun, and I just want to point out we do have Wraithsoth in hand. This was a slightly older build where I was trying out a small Kashtira package. I resolved on no, we don't really need the Kashtira package in this deck, and I took it out, but just be aware it's an option, it does work in the deck, and this was when I was trying it out. So let's get started. So it's Runick Stun, and they are going first, which most stun decks going first is pretty bad for you as the player going second, but thankfully we do not mind fighting stun. That is one of the biggest, nicest things about playing this deck, is that our trap monsters are wholly unaffected by basically anything a stun deck tries to do. So we have easy ways to negate and destroy all of their floodgates and everything. So we don't tend to care very much. So we start going through our combo, we get Fenrir, we go into Zeomin. They haven't pulled the trigger on anything besides this tip just to grab another card in hand. So we just continue comboing. We go into Jam Dragon Drive so that we can grab a Ogre Dance. The Ogre Dance is important here because the only card that matters in this matchup, if you're unfamiliar with Runick, is Runick Fountain. If we can get this off the board by any means, then we are in a very good position. So we go to combat because we want to swing with Fenrir, get the trigger, and start banishing their stuff so that they have fewer options. Unfortunately, they immediately flip up a Synchro Zone, which means we can't attack with anything besides a Synchro Monster. We don't have anything. We have to just skip to main phase 2. So at this point, we were by no means done comboing, so we have to just keep comboing. So they flip Slumber. I guess they thought we were done, or maybe that's all they have and they don't really care, to get it in the graveyard so that they can use Fountain, put 3 cards back in their deck, and draw a new 3. We immediately are going to Ghost Ogre that, and unfortunately they do have Runick Destruction to summon Hugin to banish itself so that the Runick Fountain is not destroyed. So we failed to get it off the field right now, but that's okay because we are not done by any means. We go into Psychic End Punisher, set Reframing. They use Flashing Fire to try and get rid of Psychic End Punisher, which doesn't work because we have a lot less life than them. And then we take our 2 random bodies, slap them into a Silhouette Rabbit. Silhouette Rabbit allows us to set the Apophis the Serpent. We have a Swamp Deity, and we have Temple of the Kings in hand, which means we can immediately activate Serpent, which triggers Silhouette Rabbit to blow up the Runick Fountain. So Runick Fountain is no longer a problem. It's off the field for now. They did get their draw 3 this turn, but we are going to establish a pretty significant board. So we're going to have 4 negates coming out of this turn on top of a tower, on top of 2 destructions, through all of their floodgates and everything else. So here they try to use Slumber to summon from the extra deck. We use Serpent and Swamp Deity, which if you don't know, Swamp Deity sees things in the chain that have not yet resolved, which is pretty cool. So when this Chain Link 5-1 resolves, it can negate 2 things, even though these 2 are still in the back row. It's pretty cool. So we activate Serpent and Swamp Deity so that we can negate the Slumber, and then they use Destruction to try and blow up our Swamp Deity so we can't negate it. We use another Swamp Deity to negate that one, and then we're going to be able to blow up 2 cards off of Apophis and Silhouette Rabbit, and they see the writing on the walls and they scoop here because they're going to lose their entire board, and I guess whatever they have in hand is nothing that really matters. So just a cool match that shows you how we play through stun effects pretty easily. Like, we also deal with back row quite well. We had multiple ways in one turn through Disruption to try and destroy the Runick Fountain. And again, once that happens, the Runick deck probably loses. Cool, cool. Alright, so spoiler alert, this game is a bit of a shutout, but it's a really good example of what our board can do, and what we can do in particular with access to both engines. This is an incredible hand, and we're up against a Dark Magician deck that kind of draws from all of the different archetypes that touch on Dark Magician. So we're going to go through the normal Punk combo. They use Magnamut to banish Foxytune, which does not negate, so we really don't care. We can go through full combo at this point, and they don't appear to have much else available to them. We grab Extreme Session and immediately activate it because we already have Treasures of the Kings in hand, so there's no reason to do the full combo. Instead, we can make a 2-material Jam Fever to protect our Odion part of the combo, and give us an extra draw later in the turn. So we are gone through the full Odion stuff, except we have an extra Swamp Deity, which is what we use to set to turn on the Treasures of the Kings itself. We can go through basically everything. I decide to keep the Divine Serpent Apophis and make a Silhouette Rabbit with our 2 extra materials. You could see there that the Rising Scale got Zeom into hand for follow-up. So we've got 3 cards worth of follow-up just in hand right now, along with Ghost Ogre as a disruption that we searched off of Dragon Drive, which is going to be really useful because the opponent is playing some of the Silent Sarcophagus deck, which does not like Ghost Ogre very much. So they're going through various engines trying to make something stick. I'm terrified of Toy Box, so that's what we end up spending Ghost Ogre on. Even though I know Sarcophagus could be on the field, we have other ways to destroy and negate its effects, so we should be fine. They go into Nightmare Phoenix, targeting for some reason our field spell. I guess they're afraid of our grind game, but at this point they don't have much left on the field after all of our destructions and negates. So the grind game isn't what they should be worried about as we go to battle with well over lethal. So you could see we had a bunch of destructions coming from Anguish Pattern, Silhouette, and the Apophis itself. That's minimum 3. I think, yeah, we had 4 this game, just because we had access to 2 Apophyses to summon with Anguish Pattern already on the field. So 4 destructions. We had multiple negates. We didn't even use all of our negates because I just summoned the Apophis the Serpent to get another one for next turn after they had put everything on the field and I knew they had no further extension. So, you know, you don't always have to go into the combo. If you have Treasures of the Kings, then you can just play the punk half as the punk half. It's pretty neat. Cool. Cool. Alright, so for our last game, we are up against Millennium. We are going second with a really weird hand, and I'm going to have a lot to say about this one, so I'll probably stop it a couple of times. So, Millennium is a deck that puts precisely 2 disruptions on the field. It puts a Spell Trap Negate and a Board Wipe, so that is Exodia itself, and then it sets Exiled Fires of Rage on end phase. They also open set rotation, so they get to give us a Secret Village of the Spellcasters, which stops us from activating our field spell unless we flip it face up, but if we flip it face up, we don't have a Spellcaster, so we can't use any spells at all. So we're pretty much just locked out of field spells, which is kind of funny as a lock piece. Doesn't end up mattering too much here. We do have to keep an eye on this Heart of the Blue Eyes in the graveyard, because if we summon something 3000 attack or more, it can tribute that to summon itself. Thankfully, our monsters are pretty small. We have a lot of stuff that's like 2800, but doesn't quite reach 3000, so we don't have to worry about that. And this is going to be their end board. Like I said, they've got a board wipe, they've got a spell trap negate. We're going to lead with Temple of the Kings, because if they don't negate the Temple of the Kings, we can then set the Verdict of Anubis to counter whatever they try to do next and wipe their entire board. They don't know about the Verdict of Anubis, but they understand that Temple of the Kings is a scary, scary card to have available. Even if we had something like a Karma Cannon we could resolve off of it, that's devastating. So they negate that, then we normal summon Shirakusai, which causes them to use Exiled Fires of Rage, probably a bit early in my opinion. So that blows up their own Secret Village of the Spellcasters, which lets us play our Treasures of the Kings, set an Apophis, we've got other traps we can set. We're going to search Odion just because we unfortunately used our Temple of the Kings already, so we cannot do the full Odion combo. They set another Exiled Fires of Rage. Pro tip, guys, if there is an unknown face-down card on the opponent's field, it is impermanence 100% of the time. So setting this in the column where they don't know what my face-down is tragic. People should know better by now than to do that. On their draw phase, we activate Apophis the Serpent to go grab another Apophis the Swamp Deity, which is going to be a negate. They go to negate the activation of Apophis the Serpent, and then we chain to that an infinite impermanence. Devastating for them because it is in the column with Exiled Fires of Rage, so it's going to negate the Exodia negate and then also negate their Exiled Fires of Rage for the turn, and then our Serpent will still resolve anyways. So that gets us Apophis the Swamp Deity, which is a negate, and we still have Verdict of Anubis online. They spin their wheels, not understanding exactly how badly they've messed up quite yet. They are going to go to main phase, and they get to start doing Onk things. We're going to negate the first Onk. They're going to get to a second one here before they understand that they're kind of screwed at this point. So they have so many more cards on field, but because we have strategically hit exactly what matters, we still are going to win. So even if they had activated the Millennium Onk again, we can still Verdict of Anubis that, blow up their entire board, do like 2500 damage to them, go to our turn, win the game. So that one was over even if they did not surrender right there, but yeah, don't play things in the imperm column, and you know, don't forget that Temple of the Kings gives you access to counter traps immediately, which is really good. Cool? Cool.